Greetings and salutations, dear viewers. I am Nakatalili, and I have been your host for our Minecraft series. This series, however, is going to be us taking a little look behind the scenes. I'm going to show some clips of the series, just commentate here and there, and every now and then I'll run around in the regular worlds and show you some things that you may not have been able to see normally. So, all that said, well, one thing I should mention first is this right here is my own little mod. I mentioned this back during the Spider Queen mod, and I used this every time after the Spider Queen mod, which is just a stupid little boob mod that I came up with. To be honest, something as simple as this took me all day to make. Right now it only works for 1.2.5. It not only adds the boob, but it also makes your arms just a little bit thinner. So, all that said, I may distribute that little mod. It's just a single file. And it seems to work with a lot of things, but right now it only works for 1.2.5, not the newer 1.3s. Will I update it for the 1.3s? Probably eventually, but I also kind of don't care. So, That said, it's been a little while since we were back at home here. But home we are back at. Now, you may notice that we're actually missing a few things here that we got later on, such as the extra room that in Shelter I built up here, the nether portal in back, and the 2 melons right there. We're missing that because I actually went through a couple different versions of this map as the series went on. At one point, I reseeded the map, which I'll get to when I get to it. That changed a few things, but this right here is the final version of this map. I didn't actually touch this one any point after this. And right over the hill here, as we all remember, is that one giant thing with the lava flow falling down. So that said, let's take a look back in this series, back at the very beginning. Going back to the start of it all. So if you would join me as we go back to the beginning. Video 1, as soon as it opened up, you actually see the overhead shot of my character running in. For pretty much all of the camera work that I needed done in this game, I actually got my father to help out with that. So pretty much any camera work is always done by him. Now this is, of course, the scene where we actually first find our friend holed up in the ground.
Hey in there.
Now, when I originally came up with this whole idea, my intention was that he was somewhat malevolent from the start. In fact, at the beginning, I was intending him to just be a very malevolent god, where he had actually been maybe sealed down there or some such. Admittedly, later on, once I changed how the character was interpreted and who the character really was, how he got down there doesn't make quite as much sense anymore, and I haven't really put much thought into that. But I started the game during 1.0.0, and that is where the original seed was. I've given out the seed before, but seeing as what version of Minecraft you're using determines how the seed is interpreted, if you want this exact world, you've got to go back to 1.0.0. Now, in that very beginning part, where our friend was stuck in that little cave area, I was actually debating, nearing the finale of the whole thing, one of the places you get warped to be warped back to that little area. But I figured that would have given it away just a little bit earlier than I would have liked. I wanted it subtle, and I wanted the reveal that our friend was the sign maker to be held off until the very end. All that said, I may not actually have too much to say here at the beginning, because a lot of the first season was just genuine me playing survival mode. So I didn't have too much in the way of editing to do. I will add, though, that the only mod that I used myself for the longest time was Too Many Items. I've had Too Many Items on since the beginning, and I generally use it not so much to cheat my way through things, but just to make it easier with the time-related things, so I didn't have to wait for an hour and a half to do something. On occasion, later on, I would have to use single-player commands, but it didn't come until later that I started putting single-player commands in as kind of a standard. For the longest time, all I used was Too Many Items. The world that I showed up in, actually, was the second world that I created. It was randomly generated right here in the video when I showed up into it. The first time I tried to record this, I started out in a desert, and though I could pull off surviving in a desert, it's not very good for showing how Minecraft works and the like. So, deleted the world and remade it, and here we are. I can actually see a lot of fragmenting in this video, and that's because these early videos I only rendered up to 480p. I just never really saw the need to do anything bigger than 480p, since you almost have to run the video full screen unless you manage to get YouTube to actually do the bigger viewer thing. But an important thing to note is the higher resolution a video you upload, the better quality the lower resolutions will be. So later on, I started uploading 720p videos, and that even made the 480p version look a lot better. Okay, video 1, about 5.5 minutes in, you actually saw a cut there, which was just a direct cut, one scene to the next. And I almost want to say I was editing this in Camtasia at the time, which makes fades really difficult to do. But I don't know for certain. I don't know why I was thinking doing that immediate cut would look good at all, but it wasn't too much longer that I started doing a smooth fade, which just overall shows a better progression of time. And if I can speak for a moment on the overall plot of the series, I actually had a lot of it planned out from the beginning. I knew that our friend was going to be malevolent, and I knew he was going to start tampering with us and pretty much leading into the second and third seasons. From the beginning, I knew that was how that was going to work out. As things went on, though, I did make a couple more subtle changes here and there, but even at this point, I knew that our friend was going to be malevolent. And I did a number of things to show that off, even in the survival series. Though later on, I eventually more came to the conclusion that instead of being strictly malevolent, that he was instead just almost a very young child. That's something that we'll speak more on, though, once we get to the later seasons. Say, at the very beginning, though, I was more thinking that what he was a malevolent god. Perhaps at the beginning he didn't quite remember his powers, and so he would slowly be remembering them as the series goes on. But he was some kind of malevolent god at the beginning, and I actually, originally, up until about halfway through Season 1, I fully intended for the entire series to end on the Wake Up video, without even the actual final face down. I intended the downer ending at the end. Second video, very beginning, special thanks to everyone who sent in fan art. I got a huge amount of fan art, more than I could even fit in all of the videos, by a fair margin. So thank you so much for that. I was really surprised to get any amount of fan art, even for the second video. So, really big thanks right there. Video 2, about 5 minutes in, that random dirt block that was out there in the middle of nowhere. To be honest, I still have no idea exactly what it was. It was most likely an Enderman that placed it there. I like the air of mystery that some of the odd things that happened in in Season 1 gave, but very little was actually staged in Season 1. Most of it was me just playing Minecraft as I would play it.
Now for that
Video 2, about 12 minutes in, I actually dumped all my inventory into this chest, and I did this expecting to potentially die trying to take out this creeper. And then I knew that I could respawn and still get my things back. I wanted death to be a little more of an important thing. I didn't want to just die willy-nilly in this series. But at this point in the series, I still didn't have the opinion of death that I wanted to have later on. Which, if you recall, in the entire series, aside from the very final video, I only died once in the entire series. And this actually served a very important point to help out with the sign maker and my motives and how the world works as well. So it helped it all out, so I'm very glad that I didn't die here. As close as I got to death, I didn't want to die, and it really helped push the narrative that I didn't. Video 3, right at the very beginning, you actually saw that picture drawn by a very dear person to me, Madame Berry. You actually saw a little cake in the background as one of the blocks, and that was done because when she drew that, it was actually very shortly after my birthday. Video 3, 11 minutes, maybe 10 seconds into the video, you actually hear an Enderman teleporting around, but I didn't hear him in the video. I'm not entirely sure why, but once I started editing, it was terribly obvious that you could hear it. But while I was playing, I couldn't hear it at all. Maybe the game sound was too quiet or something, but it really caught me by surprise, and I think that made it almost a little more accidentally ominous that I just completely ignored it the first time. That said, Endermen were actually introduced to the game proper not too long before I did this, and I didn't have too much experience dealing with Endermen and fighting Endermen. All I knew is that they were notoriously kind of monsters to deal with. So I was pretty genuinely apprehensive about having to fight one. Video 4, about 11 minutes in, when I made that cut to show what the entire thing would look like, I actually had never made one of these before. This is something that my father makes fairly often, that I thought was a good idea. But since I hadn't actually made it myself, I wasn't entirely positive how to make it. I intended to do it just overnight, as I said right there in the video, but it ended up not going nearly that nicely for me. I'm pretty sure day came and I was still trying to figure out how this even worked. I eventually had to even go ask my father how he did this. It's simple enough once you know, but for not having done it before. Video 5, once again, right at the beginning. This, once again, is my father playing the cameraman, who is essentially our friend at this point. But I did this time skip because I wanted to make a larger, more elaborate house, but I knew it was just going to be very boring if I tried. I've shown you everything needed to make this kind of thing. It was just a whole lot of time-consuming work at this point. Granted, I did make a lot of this off-screen. I made a lot of it with too many items. But that was pretty much all for the sake of saving some time. And actually, one thing you'll notice now is seeing Curly Naka there from behind is that I actually have long hair, as Curly Brace did, the character of my Minecraft skin. That did change as the series went on. Right away, this is how she was. I think it was later on in Survival when I actually changed her sprite a little bit. Now, I've been asked a couple times how I separated the animals one group from the next, and it's not really that difficult. If we say this is the pin that I had them all in, all I did was punch out a little section off to the side here, and punch one hole out the bottom. See, chickens are small enough to fit through a one-block area, so if I held up a piece of wheat over here, then all the chickens could make their way out, but none of the other animals could. And there were really only 3 different types of animals in here. I didn't have any pigs. So all that was left were the sheep and the cows. Now, to separate the sheep and the cows, I just did this one at a time. I'd punch the block out, and then I'd put the block back in as soon as a single animal managed to wander his way up. And then I just wander over and get that animal to where it needed to be. Video 5, about 15 minutes in, when I find that desert. Finding that desert was not an accident. I needed the cactus, and I didn't want to wander around for an hour and a half trying to find one. That would have been terrible. So I actually jumped over into too many items, switched myself over to creative mode, and just flew around for a while until I found a nearby desert. Then in the actual recording, I knew which way to run to get to it. Okay, video 5, about 16 minutes, 20 seconds in. When I see the little squid, I mentioned that it spawned in the lake. And that's actually something I was very much trying to avoid. I said that completely by accident, which is referring to the game in game terms, referring to the game as a game. I was trying very hard to make the world seem much more natural, like this was an actual world I was in. So instead, I would have said that the squid lived in that little lake, or appeared in that little lake. I wouldn't have used such a gaming specific word as spawned. Very rarely will you see iron in the side of a mountain.